work so you can play. MiniWarGaming's The Fate of Fayoom.
Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to an after-narrative campaign discussion. We have completed the Fate of Fayoom campaign. By the point, if you're watching this video, then hopefully you've already found out how it ends, because we will be giving out spoilers. We're going to be talking about the campaign and what went on, and so if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want spoilers, then turn off this video right now and go and watch it. This video won't be posted until after everything has been posted, so it's your own fault if you get spoilers. You've been warned. So this is our very first narrative campaign, and it was kind of interesting how it all came together, and I want to talk about how it went, get Steve's input as well on how the things he liked, things he didn't like. I want to give you guys some more insight into kind of the creation of all of this, just so that we can kind of see where this goes. A lot of what we do here at MiniWarGaming is experiment with different types of videos and different types of content that we create, so that we can always try to improve what it is that we're creating for you guys. And I have to say that the narrative campaign that we just did definitely had a lot of really good feedback. So you're going to see more of them. I can guarantee that, because we can't get that much awesome feedback on something and not continue it. It's just the vault memberships grew. People were, every time I posted one part of the campaign and there was a second part, I always saw a spike in vault membership signups that day. So everything about it, your comments, the actual numbers for people actually signing up for vault memberships, and the views on the videos, all these things kind of together have shown us that it's been a success. So we want to talk about that here. So first off, I want to just take this time to thank Steve for coming in.
Absolutely, it was way too much fun. Way too much fun.
And we did have a lot of fun. Steve has been the ideal person to play this against. I've been having a lot of questions about this in particular, actually. I've received several emails, also comments on my sit-and talks, where people are like, can you post the rules for it, and how did you come up with the stuff for it, and everything like that. And I have to say that the very first thing that you need in order to do a successful narrative campaign, because I now have tons of experience doing it, right? Doing a whole one, yeah, is you need a player that's going to act like Steve did. And this is not meant to just make Steve all embarrassed and everything, but there's a few things that you will have noticed. First off, he was always just having fun, even when the missions were against you.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
With a narrative campaign, you don't try to balance the missions.
No.
You try to make them narrative. And in real life, not that this is real life, but in real life, things aren't balanced. The odds are stacked against somebody, it's stacked in somebody else's favor and all of that. And so I remember growing up, go ahead.
I would say if they were balanced from one mission to the next, you would have lost interest. We would have lost interest. It wouldn't have been fun for anybody. It had to go. The flow was perfect. Underdog, overdog. It was great. It had to be
went
that
back
way.
and forth.
It had to be that way. And
yeah.
That's what made it so fun.
Yeah, and it did go back and forth.
Yeah.
Like at first, you were winning all the missions.
Yeah.
And then later on with the Necron camp, the Necron versus Necron,
yeah,
you couldn't beat the Necrons.
Not so much.
And in the end, you lost both games against the Tyranid for the Apocalypse ones. But the second one was really close. So at least it ended with a really close game. But so I remember growing up, I did a lot of role-playing games growing up, some of my own creations, and eventually we played D&D as well. And I remember my first gaming group that I GM'd, they were great because they kind of let you do whatever you want. They let you, I'll say in the nicest way possible, they let you kind of play God, in that, what you say goes. And, you can hurt their characters, you can kill their characters, and they don't complain. And I've played in other role-playing groups where certain players will be like, don't touch my character. If anything unfair happens, I'm going to complain. And that just removes all the fun from it. Yeah. And to me, those players are kind of like the tournament goers. The ones who are like, oh, 40K isn't balanced. 40K, I can't believe they allowed these things. I can't believe that, escalation destroyed it. Flyers destroyed it, all this kind of stuff. And I agree, 40K is not balanced. No. Competitive play, it's ridiculous. It just doesn't work, and except for like the few super uber lists that they fight against each other. But if you have a player or players for a narrative campaign who are kind of willing to just let whatever happen and develop a narrative, then that definitely works. So for you, Steve, I'm going to let Steve talk a little bit here. What did you find throughout the campaign that allowed it to be fun for you?
It was very enjoyable to play a game where you're just not making a list, your best possible list to beat somebody else's best possible list. I try to make my lists according to the story, and playing out the story was that was the fun. Making my list without Catan early on or stuff like that, like doing it, following the narrative, following the story was crucial for my fun. That was the main part. I mean, the way you did it as well. I looked back about some of it too. Like you stuck to your Gene Stealers and Road at the beginning. Everything followed that way, which just the overall arc, which is better. And then we make jokes in middle games, whatever. Well, what if I just send Sobek to go attack your ships, whatever? And it became that mission, which was the best one. I had so much fun with that one. That was awesome. That was so much fun.
It's kind of what gave Knum his fame, right?
It really was. But I mean, it was so not Warhammer 40K, but it was. It was like playing D&D. It was just small sized units moving up, trying to be sneaky, trying to be quiet, things moving instinctively, and then the alarms go off. It wasn't 40K, and it was the best game I've ever played. Even the other game we played shortly after that, when Knum came back down, a very small game, small board, small amount of models on the board, that was the most fun. Like, not that 40K is not fun, it is, but let it to play the actual fun. Use escalation for fun. Use everything for the fun of it, and it's so much better. Like, do a campaign. If you guys have a chance to do a campaign, do a campaign. This was the best one I ever had, not in a pool. I like to swim.
Okay. Best funny. That's going to be the new quote. I'm gonna put that as a testimonial. The best fun I've ever had, not in a pool. Steve.
Steve.
So, okay, and how did you? One thing I noticed over the course of the campaign, because you're in every single one of them, obviously, you're the opponent, is that people were starting to make references to you specifically.
Yes.
So, and in particular, people were really liking the way Steve was in the campaign, and I don't blame them, because you just you took the losses really fun, things that died. It was like almost like, ooh, what can we do with this? And brought the armies the right way, played them even the right way. Some people pointed out like tactical mistakes, and it's like, no, that's because that's what Sobek did, right? So how did you enjoy seeing kind of your name come up in the comments?
Oh, that my head got even bigger and bigger. I looked for negative comments, couldn't find one. If there was any, I'm not going to see them now. I love you guys. That was awesome. I very much appreciate all the positive comments. The internet has yet to hate on me.
Weird, eh?
Yeah, well, actually not true. I had some fantasy stuff back with Owen a while ago. I wasn't a very good player. But I guess my 40K internet reputation is okay.
Yeah. So far, so good.
So far, so good, yes.
Although I have to warn you, the longer you do it,
Absolutely, I'm waiting for it. I'm going to fight back. No, I won't.
No, it's just kind of fun to see that. I actually saw like Steve actually developing his own fan base, which is great.
Thanks, guys. Again, more fun.
So if you want to see more Steve, you make sure you lend him your support in the comments below in this video. So, okay, one of the things that I was asked was, I'm trying to remember the exact question, but it basically came down to predetermining the results in the games, and or how we came up with the scenarios basically. And I'll tell you right off the bat. Okay, here's kind of what happened, and I'll be honest, and I'll be very transparent with what actually happened, just because this was our first one, so we kind of experimented. Off the bat, I was like, okay, I sent out an email to locals saying I want to do a campaign with my Tyranids. Who's available, and we had a couple people reply, and Steve was one of them. But I knew that Steve just had Necrons, and so at first I was like, I don't really want to do Necrons because Tyranids and Necrons, that's not very iconic. Yeah. But then after a while I realized that Steve had, like, he was one of the few that could actually come in as often as necessary, had the army and all this, and so we just kind of went for it. And I already played a battle report or two against you before that, so knew your personality. I knew that would work. Because I knew I needed somebody who would just kind of go with whatever happened and wouldn't try to alter cheese and everything like that. And so then I was like, okay, so Necrons and Tyranids, how do I make this work? So I did some reading in the Necron Codex just to kind of get more up-to-date information on their lore. I had read it before, but I needed a refresher. And then I was like, okay, yeah, this can work. I know somebody pointed out that in the old Necron Codex, it says that Tyranids basically avoided the Necron worlds altogether, but we basically that's no longer, that's not in the current Necron Codex. So they've been retconned.
Yeah.
So I took kind of like, that's okay. But then some, you might think, well, why would Tyranids ever fight Necrons? But in the Tyranid Codex, there's actually an account of Tyranids fighting demons, even though they can't harvest them. And the way that it happened was the Tyranids invaded an Imperial world where there was some Space Marine chapter, I can't remember, that was actually trying to, there's like this thing into the warp that they were after, for centuries they've been using their psychic powers to keep from opening. But then when the Tyranids killed them all, then it opened up and the demons poured out. But the demons pour out into a world already infested by Tyranids, and they're like, what's going on? This world's already ravaged. What fun is that? And they start fighting the Tyranids, and the Tyranids ignore them at first until they start showing as a threat. And it became a predator versus predator thing, whereas most of the time Tyranids are just consuming, and if you put up a resistance, then they just got to bite harder kind of thing. And so even though they couldn't harvest the demons, they just they saw them as a threat. And the demons eventually lost because they weren't actually killing anything of value, because the Tyranids don't count. There's no soul and there's no blood even. It's just the ichor. And so they actually lost. So I thought this is a perfect excuse. If they can fight demons who have no interest in them, and they have no interest in the demons, then they could totally fight the Necrons.
So I can say, I think it takes the right storyteller. Anything can be done. Absolutely anything can be done. You can make a Tyranid versus Tyranid campaign with the right storyteller. I mean, that's all it takes, really. I mean, if you found a way to make it, you captivate. Like, we both got into it. You guys all got into it. Like, everybody enjoyed it, as far as we can tell. Mm-hmm. It was very. I love the story that kind of you wrote, but evolved on its own. Mm-hmm. It was just fun.
Yeah, and that's really how it started. It came up with the concept, which was, there's this world. It's not really anybody's world. It's just, it has some natives on it. Some people are like, oh, you should bring the natives into the game. It's like, okay, if I had the models for it, maybe I would. Maybe cultists would have worked next time. But then it's a Necron tomb world, and the Tyranids are, and so the tomb world's starting to awaken, and the Tyranid vanguard's already there. So it was kind of like the tomb world arising as if High Fleet came. And it gave us a really good excuse to do escalation. And that was really all I had. I had him name his overlord. Yep. And I kind of just went with the fluff of the Tyranids, that they start off with the vanguard, broodlords, lictors, gene stealers. Gave the broodlord a bit of a personality, because he's like one of the few Tyranids that probably could have a personality. And just kind of went with that. And then everything that happened, Sobek running from combat.
He just kept running.
He just kept running. And so, and he only killed the Broodlord because of Mind Shackle Scarab. So that kind of like, we made fun of him and became Sobek the Coward. And then that gave rise to Kanum doing his mutiny of sorts.
Which wasn't planned, obviously.
No.
The Necron Civil War right there was just, well, Sobek's got to go.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, okay, we don't want Sobek to go to the Belly of the Beast mission where he's going into the High Fleet. He sends somebody, so just quickly give this guy a name. And he's like, I'll give him Kanum. And Kanum's trying to prove himself. And that's where it came from. It's like, okay, now Kanum, holy cow, he killed that thing with a single tachyon arrow, and there was no other Necrons left. What could we do with that? Well, he could escape through a spore pod and be completely nuts, because somehow he made it back through the atmosphere into the planet, and he's just going crazy. And he captured that the Haruspex.
Yes, in the
yeah, because you actually it just happened to happen that way.
I happened to have one on me, whatever. Take it back to Necron Zoo, and we use it in the story.
Exactly. And as soon as there was moments like that, like he captures the Haruspex, and instantly I'm like, I have to use that. Because in a normal game, you use your Tesseract Labyrinth thing, and it's like, okay, it's dead. It's just an insta-kill. But no, it's not an insta-kill. He captures it into this whatever dimension, one-dimensional thing, whatever the Tesseract.
Whatever it is,
yeah, it has as much science behind it as the comic book Tesseract in Avengers. But anyway, it's like, it's a Tesseract. It uses dark matter, and
you call it Tesseract, you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, totally. It powers the universe, and whatever. Who cares? And so, yeah, it just kind of developed that way. Now, I do want to point out one thing. In the assassination mission, where Sobek dies, somebody in the comments said, hey, it looks like you fluffed a roll. In other words, forced a roll, because I turned on the camera and the die was already the way it was. And he's right. I'm going to say it completely honestly. In fact, we were fluffing a bunch of rolls there, because the game started, and then as the game was going, I'm like, ooh, I want this to happen. And so we started to kind of, the rolls weren't going the way we wanted it to. So I started to force rolls. And what happened when we did that?
It lost its fun. It lost its appeal. We were trying to make something instead of just playing a game and then writing a story afterwards.
Exactly. And so we made a decision at that point. Was like, okay, forget this, because I remember it was like, what did you have to roll, like a reanimation or something?
No, it was I had to escape, and with your initiative, my initiative, you need to roll 1. I needed to roll a 6 to escape. But to say though, it's not like we decided we want Sobek to survive. We realized he was going to die right there. We just wanted to move him back into the vault and just change the story. We weren't changing the game too much. We changed it a bit just so he died farther back in the room. Once we knew he was going to die, we weren't going to just keep him alive. We were going to kill him, but just Matt's way.
Yeah, I wanted it to be more cinematic than just like he got killed by a single cheese stealer. It's like, oh no, big deal. But yeah, it's funny because that's what happened. It lost a bit of its fun. I actually felt the fun being sapped out of it. And then I said, screw this, because I think we tried to make a certain roll like 5 times in a row.
Yes, we did.
And I just kept deleting the clip. Delete the clip. Delete, and that's when I just put the die down and took the shot of it.
He was getting frustrated. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, this is taking everything up until now has worked out according to what the dice want to happen. So why not just trust it?
But then when it ended up was Sobek got very back of the room, surrounded by the Lictor, Broodlord was
and the
there,
Haruspex.
and then Kanam threw out the Haruspex. I mean, that was not planned. That was just, well, that's where it is. I'm throwing everything there and take off. So we kind of let it happen naturally at the end again, and that's where the fun came again.
Yeah. So I wanted to confess that, because I know for some people if they knew that the narrative campaigns were all fudged and all predetermined, that might actually remove a bit of the interesting element of the narrative campaign. Maybe. Like every TV show and movie we watch is predetermined, right? But this might be a little different, knowing that I'm trying to create scenarios and Steve is playing. It's almost like I'm games mastering the whole thing, and he gets to be the player for it. And so if you knew that the whole thing was being fudged, it's kind of like if you went through a role-playing game with your friends, but you got predetermined exactly everything that's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's not the same. So not that wouldn't work as a predetermined campaign, but from the beginning I was saying that this isn't predetermined.
Well, the thing about it being predetermined is our energy goes down, right? We don't get excited or whatever, and then that comes across on camera, and it's just not as fun. The enjoyment's not there for everyone. So when we don't know what's going to happen, and we're hoping for one thing, but something else happens, it's funny or it's better or it's worse. It just, our energy's higher, we have more fun with it, and it translates on the camera, obviously.
Yeah, exactly, and that's important, because if it doesn't look like we're having fun, then kind of what's the point of it? And I think that one of the keys to the success of this campaign was how easy it was for me to do it, because it wasn't really any harder than making a battle report. Like I could have put more polish into the story times and made them more like, well, if you've ever seen Dave's 40K history, where he's like voiceovering cool pictures, and that would be really cool. But it would sap a lot of the energy for me out of it, because I'd have to like actually do all that work. Whereas I could just sit down for the 5 minutes and do the story time.
Personally, I like your story times the way they are. If you recall, when Matt's recording his story times, I get in the chair, I turn away from him, I look at the ground, I let him tell a story, and I just visualize. So I like his way better.
Yeah, he was always off camera, because it was right before we'd actually play, and he would, and he would hear the story, and then he'd be like, "Cool." He's like, "Now let's play," and it would get him all excited. So that's exactly it. And so I just kind of played to, because I know that I can just sit down and tell a story in 5 minutes and make it semi-interesting. So the whole thing, very low production costs, I would say. The big hard thing after a while was like 2 Apocalypse games at the end. Even mission 5A and 5B required 2 different days, whereas all the other stuff, like we would do 2 battle reports in a day. And these are all things that are important for me as a business owner to kind of to look at, because we need to be able to keep the cost in such a way and time that we can keep producing them at the rate that's fast enough to be able to keep up with what everybody wants, and still be able to do all our other videos too. Because at the same time I was doing Infinity stuff and Dreadball stuff and my weekly sit and talks and life and everything else. Yeah. And so the missions were relatively easy to design. I took a lot of inspiration from like the Data Slates and the Altar of War and just other things I'd seen in the past, and just kind of, I think we were fortunate with how well the missions worked out, because normally when you make your own missions, wonky things happen. Yeah,
I mean that's generally, I'm telling you now, I don't normally like custom stuff, because there's usually some weird way off balance rule, but for some reason the off balance stuff made sense and made it more fun this time, only because there was a story. Like, you can't just play a mission like that for whatever reason. Let's just see if you can beat 1,500 point advantage or whatever. You can, but I mean, whatever. But when you put a story behind it, it's like you want the weird stuff, the weird rules, the alarm mission, and all that kind of stuff. You want that kind of stuff. I did.
And in the end, because it's a narrative, it allowed you to forgive whatever outcome happened. It's like, oh, I lost because of this unbalance, but it's like, oh well, how can we take that and turn it into the story? Like one thing, I'll admit, one thing that kind of worries me, and because I say worry right now because we haven't yet posted the final mission at the time of making this video, is how everybody's going to receive the very final mission. And the reason I'm worried about that right now, of course, by the time you see this video, my worries will either have been confirmed or been for nothing, is because the mission is stacked in my favor as a Tyranid player. I've got a 2,000 point advantage. All the objectives were on my half of the table. And actually, that was the two big things. And yeah, there wasn't really anything else, was there?
No, well, yeah, it was a very uphill battle for the Necrons, but it wasn't a regular Apocalypse game. It wasn't just two guys throwing a bunch of models on the table and rolling dice. It was the end of a story. With what happened to the Necrons throughout the campaign, there had to be disadvantage. There had to be punishment. If there was just an even Apocalypse game at the end, the whole campaign would have been meaningless. It would have been... So
it's like no matter what happens, in a 4+ you win.
Yeah, it built up to where it was, and what happened. That's it.
Yeah, because really, like in the Necron Civil War, you lost both the missions, so you didn't get the Catan, and you didn't manage to get the shipyards. Yep. And I was hoping you were going to win one of those. I know. Like once again, predetermined. I was like, okay, I'm not going to predetermine, but I was hoping he was going to win one, because then the second to last Apocalypse game, so Mission 6A. It was once again the fight was, so now you didn't get the ships, but I'll give you one more chance to knock out that 2,000 point reinforcements. I knew we were going to give him the Catan in the last mission because by then he's got him under control. I had to because you just needed them to make a really cool Apocalypse game and a good narrative. Yeah. But in that second to last mission, it's like, okay, do I get the extra 2,000 points, which made a huge difference, of course. Completely against the Necrons. In fact, if you're thinking, well, that wasn't balanced, it was in the Tyranid's favor, the answer is yes, it exactly was.
Absolutely.
And it was funny, even when we were playing, how many times was I like, I'm not quite sure who I want to win.
Exactly. Well, I actually said I don't want the Necrons to win. I will play to win, because I'm not going to play not to win. If I'm going to play, I'm going to try to win. However, they didn't deserve the victory overall. I said they went to Civil War, they got to lose this thing.
Exactly. Yeah, they broke in half. Yeah. And while they're in the midst of Kanum basically, Kanum is actually the one who lost the battle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he's the one that caused the rupture.
Maybe Sobek the coward would have won.
He was proving effective until then.
He was winning his games. He wasn't doing anything personally, but in the very last game, Kanum didn't do much but kill a character.
Yeah, it's true. He held off. Yeah, he held off a lot of guys. But in the end, it was Kanum actually the better leader. It didn't look like it. He lost.
He was the better champion, not the better leader.
Exactly. Yeah, Sobek was cowardly. Kanum did all the cool stuff, but he did kind of have his head rearranged. Some screws, literally, some bolts kind of came loose
a little bit
as he was shaking in that spore pod coming back down to the.
No, I like how we're talking like it's these two Necrons, not me making these mistakes. I like let's keep doing that. Well, it's not my fault. It's these two characters on the board.
Exactly. Yeah, well, that's how you have to play it, right? You're just the guy moving the models around.
I'm just pointing them.
Well, the funny thing is, in some ways, it's true because you got to play the best you can, but then you roll the dice.
Yeah. Well.
And the dice kind of tell us what the story is going to be, and in a sense, we're allowing dice to kind of say, oh no, the story is going to go this way. Oh, we get a sudden turnaround here.
But the narrative actually kind of it does affect you in a way, because after a few games with Sobek, it's like, well, he's kind of a coward. He's probably going to run. Well, maybe I was going to move him away anyway. And then when it came to Kanum's insane. He would just charge that big, Haruspex or whatever. He'll just charge right in there. I should run away in a game or move somewhere else or do something else. But no, Kanum's going in, so that's why I played it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the fun of it, right? You role play in a sense. There's the role playing element there. It's not just about tactics; it's about what would this guy do.
Yeah, exactly.
And they did develop the characters of their own, or characteristics of their own, which is interesting. Even the Broodlord kind of got his. The Tyranid ones, of course, most of them remain mostly faceless because they're Tyranids, and there's. It didn't really have. I used the Death Leaper, and he did kind of go after Sobek. I had the Hive Tyrant and the Prime, but they got killed a couple times, and and that was about it. But so I will say that though I was a little concerned, or I am a little concerned that people are going to see that because I won. If you had won, I wouldn't be concerned at all.
Well, while we're talking about that game, I want to ask you a question I thought about last night. We actually played this game yesterday. 2 Apocalypse games in a row. You brought no anti-air. You brought no flyers. How come?
I don't have any.
You have the Harpy and the...
Oh, they're not anti-flyer though. They only fire at the ground.
Really? I'm not a flying Hive Tyrant to take out my Doom size?
Well, I had the one. The problem is I only had 5,000 or 7,000 points.
Only 7,000 points.
Well, no. When you want to bring, I wanted to bring that Hive command node thing, but so that took up 2 Hive Tyrants right there, and it's an expensive unit. I wanted to bring the Endless Swarm because I knew it would be cinematic, and that takes up a lot of points when you have your 180 guys or whatever it was. And then I knew I wanted to bring the Hierophant and the Hero Duel.
You have to, yeah. That's
like 1,600 points right there. And I wanted to bring that Carnifex group. There's almost 1,000 points right there. And I wanted to bring because I wanted to bring formations. Because you notice there was no Tyrannifexes. There was no Exocrine or Haruspecs. There were no Biovores even, and they're cheap. It's because I basically brought everything in formations. And I brought that Warrior formation from the one data slate. And so I just didn't have the points. Okay. If I could have fit, because they're like almost 300 points apiece. So if I could have fit 1 or 2 flying Hive Tyrants, I probably would have. But in the end, it worked because you didn't bring 9 flyers. If we had talked about it and you're like, I'm going to bring 9 flyers, I'd be like, okay, fine, I'll bring some anti-flyer stuff. But that kind of allowed the Doom size just to kind of do their thing and fly around.
I figured the second Apocalypse games you would have them because the only thing that was any success in the first Apocalypse game was the Doom sides. So I figured, okay, I got to prepare for them, but whatever, see what happens. And you didn't bring them, so I was completely shocked, actually.
Yeah. No, it was more just because for the second one, I was like, okay, what do I take out so I can add those Gene Stealers? Because I knew I wanted to bring the Broodlord and Lictor.
Right.
And it was the formation, once again. And so I brought a minimum size formation. It was like, you have to bring 3 squads of Gene Stealers or more. And I'm like, okay, 3 10-man squads, no upgrades. And then I took out the adrenal glands from all my Hormagaunts because I realized that it didn't do anything against Necrons. And then I still had 600 points over. And so I was like, what do I take out so I can add in, because I wanted to add Tyrannifexes just for something different, right? But I'm like, I don't want to take out the Endless Swarm for sure. Not because it was effective, but because it just looks cool. Yep. I was like, maybe I'll take out the Subterranean Assault, the Trigons and Molochs. I'm like, but they're cool. They pop up and they look neat. Yep. And so I'm like, what do I take out? And so I just emailed Steve and I was like, add 600 points to your army because I can't take anything out.
I'm at home trying to make my list. I'm working on it. I'm trying to just take this out, add this, take this item off this character. Can't try to squeeze everything in. I get this email. Oh, good. Add 600 points. You have the same problem I'm having.
Exactly. Because 7,000 points when you've just literally, because if you a couple weeks back, by the time you're watching this video, I posted the showcase of my army. There was it was 15,490 points of Tyranids. That was the reason I made that video was because I was getting them all out to organize for the Apocalypse game. And so many people had requested I make the video. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll take the extra time and I'll make this video. And so I had just laid out 15,000 points. And then I had to make a 7,000 point army. It's like that's like more than half is gone. And what do you take out?
Take your arm in the middle of the table. You do this. You go. That's my army.
Yeah, that's why exactly. And it was very disappointing. I wanted to bring my other 2 Carnifexes. I wanted to bring my 3 Turvagons. I wanted to bring my 4 Tyrannifexes that are like over 200 points each. Like I wanted to bring all that. Even the other couple Flying Hive Tyrants, and the Swarm Lord model as just a Hive Tyrant with double bone swords or whatever. I wanted to do all that, but I couldn't. Just didn't have the points for it. And it worked out nicely, actually. The 5,000 point games, both of them we got done in a day.
Yeah.
So, and I wasn't expecting that.
Well, we both kind of stayed shooting.
Yeah.
We weren't doing a lot of combat. On that last game, I completely lost my thought. Mid-sentence.
All right.
Oh, right. I wanted to know how you felt about was it right to go after all your snaps in an Apocalypse game? I accomplished that goal, but didn't win me the game.
You mean that it was bad tactics, or did it make sense role playing wise?
No, tactics wise.
I think it's the only. I think it's the only reason that you managed to get as well as you did. If you remember that one warrior.
That one warrior, you guys saw it. I didn't like that guy.
Yeah, and he even killed your last bike.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by the dice being like, no, it's not going to go like that. It's going to go like this. So yeah, if that one warrior had fallen,
All that firepower could have went somewhere else.
there's that.
There's that.
And yeah, because like you put like one of the Catan's attacks,
yep.
large strength 9 AP2 blast that hit only him just to finish off the synapse. Whereas that had get plunged into the hive node or whatever. So I think it was the right strategy. I just think he just got unlucky with the dice. Killing out. If that last warrior would have fallen, then a lot of synapse would have been lost because that warrior had an 18-inch synapse because he was part of that formation. It just worked really well. Okay. So I actually had a surprisingly small amount of synapse, but it was all like, you know, I had the asset to bring back a formation, so I knew if you killed all the warriors, I could bring them back. If you killed the node, which had huge synapse bubble,
yes it did,
and it was very hardy. Until you put destroyer templates on it, then that did the trick. That's really what did it. Brah, brah, and they're just all insta kill. I loved it. But
more
yeah,
Catan. Anybody plays Apocalypse of Necrons? More Catan, lots of Catan, Transcendent Catan, Tesseract Vaults, Catan.
yeah, they're definitely one of the more effective ones. That's for sure. And they're both good. Like even the Tesseract Vault, which has limitations of being a vehicle, which meant I was able to shoot through those 9 hull points pretty fast.
Yeah, the thing is I learned about that is you don't put it on your front line.
48-inch weapons.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
It looked cool. It's like, oh no, Catan, bam! Oh, bye-bye, Catan.
I did just deploy for display.
Oh, so did I. Like the endless swarm all out front. It's like, come on, do you have this many shots? I don't think you have this many shots. But then you did. You actually like started. You dropped down a few meteors, and yeah, it was pretty awesome. So it was cinematic. Things died really quickly. So hopefully everybody accepts what happens. And I guess that's the other part of a narrative campaign is that the audience kind of has to accept what happens too, because except for that one mission, for part of that one mission, we're not trying to control it. I'm trying to set up the missions the best I can to not balance them, but give the story a chance.
You said even, I don't know if it was on a video or not, but before we played those missions, they were story missions. They weren't meant to be a big part of the game. They were about evolving the story. That's what they were there for in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, we'll see. And it's all interesting. Now that it's over and we got plans for future campaigns and everything else like that, it's going to be interesting to see where this all goes. Well, I think we've discussed everything I wanted to discuss. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, leave us your comments below. Let us know what you thought. I know that everybody's been leaving comments throughout the whole thing, giving lots of good feedback in my sit and talks. And so if you have anything more to say about the campaign, just go ahead and post it below.
And more love for me.
Yeah, lots of love for Steve. And find every comment that says anything nice about Steve and thumb it up. And anyone that says bad things, thumb it down.
That's what I do.
All the comments have the one thumb up. That's Steve.
I made a bunch of accounts, Matt. They're all me.
All right. Well, stay tuned for more of these narrative campaigns. We definitely want to do more. We're definitely going to do more. We've already got the next one planned. I'm not going to tell anything about it right now. Maybe by now you actually know more information. I'm not quite sure what we'll be revealing, but we're definitely going to keep doing these. It's been too successful, too much fun, too easy to do for something that's been so awesome to not continue doing these. So thank you again for all your support. Thank you, Steve, again for coming.
Absolutely.
And happy wargaming.